1. A brief historical comment on scientific knowledge as Socratic ignorance. In Plato's Apology of Socrates, perhaps the most beautiful philosophical work I know, Socrates reports how surprised he was that the Delphic oracle answered no to the question of whether anyone was wiser than Socrates. What does the god mean? Socrates asked himself, knowing full well that he was not wise, and he arrived at the following conclusion. I am indeed a little wiser than the others because I know that I do not know, but the others do not even know that much, for they believe that they know something. Socrates' insight into our ignorance, I know that I know almost nothing, is of the greatest significance. Often this insight has not been taken very seriously. It has even been held to be paradoxical, and certainly in the Apology the formulation is intended to sound rather surprising and paradoxical. Footnote: I know that I know nothing might be considered as a variant of the paradox of the liar. What I say now is false. Inserting the word almost formally avoids the appearance of the paradox. Therefore, skepticism, at least in this sense, is certainly not obviously nonsensical, as Wittgenstein says. Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, 1918-1922, Proposition 651. Also, the classic formulation of skepticism, there is no universal criterion of truth, is far from being nonsensical. Indeed, skepticism in this sense is a true theory. However, one certainly ought not to infer from this that there can be no progress in the sciences. Socrates' thesis concerning our ignorance is not the oldest form of skepticism. A far older form may be found in Xenophanes. Xenophanes' skepticism is particularly interesting, since it explicitly admits progress in our knowledge. End of footnote. Socrates' pupil Plato abandoned the Socratic thesis of our ignorance and with it the Socratic demand for intellectual modesty. Socrates and Plato both insisted that a statesman ought to be wise. But by this they mean fundamentally different things. According to Socrates, the statesman ought to be aware of his ignorance, whereas according to Plato he ought to be a thoroughly instructed thinker, a learned philosopher. The Socratic thesis concerning our ignorance has frequently been reasserted during the history of epistemology, for example, during the middle period of the Academy founded by Plato. Essentially, there are three views in the theory of knowledge. 1. An optimistic view. We are capable of understanding the world. 2. A pessimistic view. Mankind is incapable of gaining any knowledge. This is the view that nowadays is referred to as skepticism. 3. The third view is that of skepticism. Skeptomai equals to examine, reflect, inquire, in the original sense of the Middle Academy. This is also the view of the pre-Socratic philosopher Xenophanes. We do not possess a criterion of truth, nor do we have any certain knowledge, but we can search, and by searching we may eventually find something better. According to this form of skepticism, it is possible for our knowledge to grow. The two forms of skepticism had the stronger arguments on their side, until Newton. Newton's Principia, 1687, however, gave rise to an entirely new situation. It may be seen as the realization of the research program of the pre-Socratics and Plato, a realization going far beyond the most daring dreams of the ancients. The predictions of Newton's theories were confirmed with incredible precision, and what at first appeared as a deviation from his predictions led to the discovery of the planet Neptune. This, without any doubt, was knowledge, certain knowledge, episteme in Plato's and Aristotle's sense, certain knowledge of the cosmos, knowledge of a kind that the pre-Socratics and Plato could hardly have dreamt of. The skeptics were defeated, so it appeared, although they did not immediately realize it. 52 years after Newton, Hume, one of the greatest skeptics, wrote his A Treatise of Human Nature in the hope of creating a theory for the social sciences to be compared with Newton's theory of gravitation. It was Kant, converted to skepticism by Hume, who most clearly recognized the almost absurd character of the new knowledge. Astonished by the success of Newton's theory and under the influence of Hume, 100 years after Newton's Principia, Kant posed the following question: how is a pure science of nature possible?